In this video, we're covering dependent and independent events. So the first thing we're going to focus on is what we call independent events. So these are two events that one outcome does not affect the other. So an event is independent if its one outcome does not affect the other. There's no interaction. All right, so if A and B are two independent events, then the probability of A and B occurring is probability of A times probability B. In a real-world example, tossing a coin and rolling a die, they're two independent events. You can do them together, and we can get what's the chance of getting the heads in a 1, but they're independent because let's say I toss the coin first and then I roll the die. The rolling of the die does not depend on what I got when I toss the coin. The tossing of the coin has no impact on the probabilities of rolling a die. Now, dependent events. So these are a little bit more complicated. So dependent events are two events that one event does actually have an effect on the outcome of the other. So the best way to view this is, let's say we want to draw two cards from a deck without replacement. If I draw one of those cards out, suddenly the probabilities of drawing every other card in that deck, if I don't put it back in, so without replacement, is affected because overall there are less cards, and obviously that one card that I drew out is no longer in there. So if we're going to do a worked example here, it might help with the understanding of what's going on. So in our worked example, we have a bag that contains 3 blue marbles and 1 yellow marble. So 2 marbles are drawn from the bag without replacement. So the key there, without, tends to indicate that this is going to be a dependent event. So the first question is saying, just find the probability of selecting a blue marble. So to help with this question, I'm actually just going to draw our marbles up here. Alright, so remember when we're dealing with probability, so in our case, the probability of a blue marble, it's going to be the frequency of blue divided by our total marbles. So in our example, there's 3 blue marbles, so 3 over a total of 4. So the probability of getting a blue marble straight off the bat is 3 over 4. Now the second question, selecting a blue marble with the second draw if our first one was a blue. So let's draw the marbles up here again. Alright, this time we've drawn a blue already, so it's no longer there, it's gone. Alright, so now the probability of blue second, let's just call it, alright, is going to be based on the data set we have left, which is just this here. Alright, we've eliminated that first one that we've drawn, it's not going back in there, ignore it, it's gone, we have a whole new data set. So again, same thing, frequency of blue over the total. So in this case, it's going to be 2 over 3. Okay? So if I was to compare these two probabilities, in our first draw, our probability was 3 over 4. And in our second, it was 2 over 3. That is an indicator that it was dependent events. As you can see, what happened first actually had an impact on the second one, because we've eliminated one of the blue marbles. So instead of having 3 left, we now have 2. And the total number of marbles went from 4 to 3. Alright, so there's changes all around. That's an indicator that you've had a dependent event. It has had an impact on probabilities, future probabilities. So to just quickly recap, we covered 2 things here, 2 types of events. Independent events, where 2 events are independent if the outcome of one event has no effect on the outcome of the other. And our example there was tossing a coin and rolling a die. Doesn't matter what you do first, doesn't matter anything, it will always be, they're independent. Tossing a coin has no impact on rolling that die. Now, we also covered dependent events, which we said were a little bit more complicated. That's because these events, the first event that occurs, does have an impact on the outcome of future events. So we had 2 examples. The first example that I wrote in blue down the bottom, you can see, is if you draw 2 cards from a deck without replacement. And then the one we used in our worked example was the marbles. If we draw one marble and don't put it back in, it has an impact on the probability of later chances.